The second code of music is memes.
Like the woman yelling at the cat?
Yeah, but a little broader. If texture is a spinning and weaving of frequencies into a musical singularity, then memes are signalarity, a lighting up of the dust of memory swirling around this whole, somewhat as galaxies swirl around black holes. Memory is typically of the past, but not always. It is simply a matter of the synthesis of moments that is repetition. For example, there is memory of the future. The Matses people use a plant. It's a medicine called Nunu to introduce visions of animals at specific future times and places, which they then hunt. More specifically, memes are units of cultural memory that constitute the communal unity of their communities, figuring music as something integrated. They are equivalent to Barth's cultural codes. However, we will use the term culture more inclusively than either Barth or Richard Dawkins, the inventor of the term meme. Barth does not discuss non-human culture, while Dawkins discounts non-human cultural memory, such as bird songs, as just interesting oddities. But in our view, all that is required for a culture is a mind and some matter, such as a musician and an instrument. That is it. For example, Élian Redig, whose piece, L'Île Résonnante, we will examine, is totally uninterested in human culture as a frame for her music. She says, to be honest, I've never been concerned about the role of music in society. I believe I've been able to make my music only because I have never really asked what its properties are, whether astral or minimalist or what have you. Rather, in her music, she is interested in the culture of herself and her synthesizer. In her words, perhaps understanding each other a little. As culture is both material and mental, musical memes are both samples and symbols. The word sample has conventionally been used for short sound clips, while longer or more abstract memes have been called songs, styles, etc. But samples encompass the full range of bits and pieces, sonic or otherwise, that blink on and off, activated through the quasi-optical fibers of music's external network.
To blink. To blink.
Precisely. Symbols are references to cultural ideas, images, actions, etc. that also light up in music's networks. Samples and symbols both have the same poles of light and dark, on and off. Linguistic memes, too, can be considered in terms of samples and symbols. The prototypical linguistic meme is the word, a little bit of language that has both a certain mouthfeel as a sample and a certain symbolic import, imported into a text. We will illuminate the general musical memes, thought of as word and light in the particular. Word and light as actual symbols in a series of 3 pieces. We will let each piece spill into the next through an inquiry into an imagined originary word, with an eye to the fluidity of memes and culture, until at last light turns to darkness and vice versa, as words too must always rotate like meat on a rotisserie if they are to feed our souls, instead of ossifying into dry doxa. This fluidity helps shatter the doxastic illusion that human culture is the basis of all ideas, images, and actions, while yet affirming the unbounded intergalactic cultural depth of music.
Sounds great. What's first?
The piece, Iube Domine, which we have already encountered. It is a medieval setting of a liturgical reading of the beginning of the Gospel of John, about the light of the Word shining into the darkness.
In principio erat verbum, erat apud eum.
The question arises, is the word a real word, or is word a metaphor? If word is a metaphor, what is the literal word for word? But similarly, if the word was a real word, which word was the word word? Was the word word?
How many words would a word work?
Yeah. Was the word God? There are no italics or quotation marks in ancient Greek, so it at least puns on the word was God. Was the word Hermes the name of the Greek god of hermeneutics, who is also known as the Word? Or was it Thoth, the name of Hermes' Egyptian antecedent, the god of the moon and writing, who is said to have written wisdom on the Great Pyramid? Or could the word have been Om, the all-encompassing symbolic sound or song of the cosmos and consciousness in the Vedas and Upanishads? As it appears when we try to nail down a word, it branches out endlessly and beginninglessly like a tangle of mycelia. Already in the Gospel of John, the one word was at least two. It was with God, and it was God.
The word towards two words.
Whatever the word is, it is something that means something. Its penumbral light in the darkness is a mean between two extremes via a three-term proportion, as it were: God, word, void, or whole, holler, whole.
What are the ratios in this proportion?
Well, if the word somehow both was God and was with God, then the word's ratio is the same as God's ratio. It means the same thing. There's only one ratio that applies to both a whole and a part in a three-term proportion, and that is the golden ratio, i.e. the golden logos, which is also the Greek word for word. This venerable verbal ratio is found throughout our universe. For example, it traces the human form. It is the average ratio of the maximum orbital radii of successive planets or moons, and it frames spaces that mediate the human and the celestial spheres. Gothic churches in which Iube Domine was sung, and the Great Pyramid.
So maybe the word was word.
That's right. Another contender is light. Light being the effect of the word, and in Genesis, the first thing spoken into being. For just as before all words was the word, before all created light, some report, was the uncreated light. It is symbolized most arrestingly by John Taverner in the first movement of his Icon of Light. Although its texture is more variegated and elaborate than that of Iube Domine, it still samples the austere sound of chant. The text is false, or light. The piece alternates quiet, tentative, ever different string trio chords with choral blasts of a strange, unchanging chord. According to Taverner, the string trio represents the soul yearning for God. By contrast, the ejaculatory outbursts of Faust represent the light, which St. Simeon the New Theologian reports shines on us without evening, without change, without alteration, without form. Now, if there is an uncreated light, then there must also be an uncreated darkness. This is expressed as plainly as can be expected, where one perhaps least expects it. The very beginning of Genesis. In the beginning, darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters.
Then darkness is another possible word.
Yes, it is. Redigue articulates a vision of the uncreated darkness churning within the light. In the beginning, there was the air's powerful breath, violent, intimidating tornadoes, deep, dark waves emerging in long pulsations from cracks in the earth, joined with shooting fire and a flaming crackling, surging water, waves streaming into shimmering droplets. Music for Redigue is a mimetic mimesis of this originary noise, with the freedom of a development beyond temporality, a return to the absolute beginning. Redigue traces grace upon the face of the deep, with or without religious symbols. From her perspective, the religious element of the music of Johann Sebastian Bach, for example, is not reference to Christianity in the music, but is expressed by the music itself, that is, by all of its voices, not just its memes. Rather than acting as a mirror for religious culture, Redigue's music reacts like a mirror for the listener in communion with it. There is, appropriately enough, a kind of symbolic mirroring in Léo Raisonnant, namely the mirrored dimensions of a mountain and a lake, as Redigue reports. The first, third, and fifth sections appear to depict the dark water, while the second and fourth sections appear to depict a mountain island and its reflection, respectively. Let's listen to a little of the first water section. As this brief meme chain has shown, music hangs together through memes. It is integrated as a tangle of samples and symbols, which are yet subject to boundless variation, like repetition in general, and like the communities that form around these memes. This dynamic perspective upholds freedom. Did any of the musicians reviewed here ask for permission from authorized representatives of the amorphous culture that they themselves were helping to craft? If that were even possible?
No.
They just wrote what they wrote. And this freedom is what gives dirt or substance to a musical memescape. Next, we will see how word and light and darkness are images not just of memes, but of structure.